Once you hurt a loyal man, something changes deep inside him, not just in his heart, but in his mind, in the very architecture of his soul. Loyalty is not just an emotion, it is a psychological bond, a sacred contract between two human beings built on trust, consistency, and care. When a loyal man gives you his trust, he gives you something rare, a part of himself that he doesn't offer to just anyone. It's not about weakness, it's about belief. He believes in you when the world doesn't. He stands by you even when circumstances fall apart. But once that trust is broken, once that belief is betrayed, something within him transforms permanently. When a loyal man is hurt, he doesn't explode with rage or rush to defend himself. He retreats into silence. That silence, though often misunderstood, is not a void of emotion. It is a storm beneath the surface, a deep inner process where his heart and mind struggle to make sense of betrayal. He stops speaking, not because he has nothing to say, but because words feel meaningless to those who failed to understand his loyalty. In that quiet space, something powerful begins to happen. The man who once gave his all now turns inward, not in weakness, but in search of strength. His silence is not surrender, it's self-preservation. The loyal man understands that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every explanation is worth giving. There comes a time when silence says everything that words cannot. Psychologically, silence serves as a defense mechanism. When a man is betrayed, his nervous system experiences an emotional overload. His mind seeks safety, and the easiest way to regain balance is through withdrawal. Silence gives him room to process the chaos. It allows him to detach from the noise of confusion and disappointment. In that stillness, he reflects. He examines where he gave too much, where he ignored the warning signs, and where he mistook someone's need for his devotion. That reflection becomes the soil in which wisdom grows. He starts to see clearly, perhaps for the first time, who truly valued his loyalty and who only used it for convenience. As time passes, his silence begins to shape his identity. It no longer feels like a cage, it becomes a fortress. Inside that quiet, he rebuilds his inner foundation. He studies his emotions, not as a victim, but as an observer. He notices how deeply he cared, how quickly he forgave, and how generously he gave chances. He recognizes that loyalty, though noble, can become self-destructive when it is one-sided. And as he understands this truth, his silence transforms from sorrow into strength. He no longer feels the need to prove his worth to anyone. He learns that peace is not found in being understood by others. It is found in understanding himself. Silence also reshapes how a loyal man communicates with the world. He begins to speak less but mean more. His words become deliberate, his expressions more grounded. He no longer wastes energy explaining his actions or defending his emotions to those who took them for granted. He realizes that real loyalty doesn't need an audience, and real integrity doesn't need validation. When people notice his distance, they might interpret it as coldness or pride, but it is neither. It is healing. It is the quiet maturity of a man who has learned to protect his spirit. The world expects noise from pain, but true healing often arrives in whispers. In silence, the loyal man reconnects with himself. He starts revisiting his values, his dreams, and his direction. Before the pain, his life might have revolved around others, being dependable, being there, being the one who never leaves. But now, his focus shifts inward. He realizes that his loyalty must first belong to his own peace. He starts to build habits that restore his confidence, reading, working out, praying, meditating, or simply being in nature. Each quiet moment becomes an act of self-respect. Each breath in solitude becomes a statement, I choose myself this time. Slowly, the hurt begins to lose its power over him. Silence also teaches him emotional control. The more he sits with his feelings, the less reactive he becomes. He stops trying to change what cannot be changed and starts accepting what is. That acceptance frees him. It doesn't mean he forgets the betrayal. It means he no longer allows it to define his emotional climate. He observes his pain with clarity instead of being consumed by it. This level of detachment is rare. It's the kind that only comes from someone who has loved deeply and been wounded honestly. Through silence, he gains mastery over his emotions. He learns that peace is not the absence of storms. It is the ability to remain calm within them. With time, his silence begins to intimidate the same people who once underestimated him. They notice he no longer reacts, no longer pleads, no longer chases. That composure unsettles them because silence reflects power. They can no longer control his emotions. When a loyal man reaches this stage, his silence is no longer about pain, it's about discipline. He has learned to guard his words because he knows the value of peace. He understands that not every situation requires confrontation, and that sometimes walking away silently is louder than any argument could ever be. This transformation is both psychological and spiritual. Silence teaches him self-awareness. It forces him to face himself, his patterns, his insecurities, and his strengths. It makes him understand that true loyalty must be rooted in self-respect. The man who once sought to protect everyone else now learns to protect his own energy. That's why, after betrayal, a loyal man doesn't come back the same. His silence reshapes his priorities. He becomes more patient, more selective, more self-assured. His energy no longer leaks into people or situations that don't value it. He no longer wastes time proving his worth. He simply lives it. Through silence, he finds his identity again. He realizes that loyalty was never his weakness. It was his gift. The mistake was giving it to those who couldn't understand its worth. Now, he gives that loyalty to his purpose, his dreams, and his peace. He learns to sit comfortably in solitude, to enjoy his own company, and to rebuild his confidence from within. What once felt like emptiness now feels like freedom. His silence becomes a sanctuary where his soul can breathe again. So, while others may see his silence as distance, he knows it is his greatest transformation, because in that silence he is no longer the man who was broken. He is the man who learned to heal without noise, to grow without attention, and to rise without revenge. His silence is not the absence of words, it is the presence of strength. When a loyal man is betrayed, something within him shifts permanently. The trust he once gave so freely becomes guarded, measured, and precise. He doesn't stop believing in goodness, but he learns to protect his faith in people. His loyalty, once open and unconditional, evolves into discernment. This is not bitterness, it's awareness. He begins to understand that trust is not a gift, it is a privilege that must be earned and maintained through consistency and truth. The man who once saw the best in everyone now starts to see people as they are, not as he wishes them to be. This awakening changes everything about how he connects, how he listens, and how he loves. Psychologically, this transformation is natural. When a loyal person experiences betrayal, the brain responds with a heightened state of alertness, a survival instinct. It learns from the pain, rewiring itself to avoid repeating the same emotional harm. The mind becomes sharper, more observant, more cautious. Where once he might have ignored inconsistencies or made excuses for others, he now notices every small detail. The tone in someone's voice, the patterns in their behavior, the sincerity behind their actions. Betrayal teaches him to see what emotion once blinded him to. It is through this process that trust transforms into discernment. Discernment is not about building walls, it's about building filters. The loyal man still believes in connection, but he no longer offers his heart to those who haven't proven themselves worthy of it. He becomes intentional with his energy. He studies people quietly, how they speak when they want something, how they behave when they don't. He learns that consistency is the truest sign of loyalty, and words mean nothing without follow-through. This new understanding gives him emotional clarity. He stops assuming everyone has the same heart as he does. Instead, he learns to observe before he invests, to understand before he commits. This evolution doesn't make him cold. It makes him wise. He still has the same capacity for love, but now it is guided by self-awareness. The loyal man who once trusted blindly now trusts intelligently. He learns that some people love the idea of loyalty but cannot return it. Others appreciate his presence but never honor his effort. And some will take his goodness for weakness until they lose it. Each of these lessons deepens his understanding of human nature. He no longer resents these truths. He accepts them as part of the complexity of life. Pain has become his teacher, and discernment is the wisdom that pain left behind. There's a psychological balance that forms within him. Before the betrayal, his emotional compass was guided by empathy alone. He felt deeply and acted purely from the heart. Afterward, that compass gains a new dimension: logic. Now, when someone enters his life, he doesn't rush to give trust. He allows time to reveal truth. He lets people show him who they are through consistency, not words. This is emotional intelligence in its highest form. The ability to combine compassion with caution, to balance openness with boundaries. He still gives chances, but never at the cost of his peace. The loyal man also learns to listen differently. Before he listened to emotions, now he listens to patterns. He understands that loyalty isn't something people talk about. It's something they demonstrate. He stops falling for promises and starts observing actions. The same heart that once made him vulnerable now makes him powerful because he understands how to protect it. His discernment allows him to navigate relationships with clarity. He knows when to give, when to hold back, and when to walk away. This psychological growth gives him control, not over others, but over himself. In this process, his trust in others may lessen, but his trust in himself grows stronger. He becomes confident in his ability to recognize red flags, to sense emotional dishonesty, and to walk away from anything that doesn't align with his values. This self-trust becomes his foundation. He no longer questions his worth when people betray him. Instead, he questions why he allowed them such deep access in the first place. This introspection gives him emotional independence. He no longer relies on others to validate his loyalty. He validates it through his integrity. Discernment also changes the way he defines love. He realizes that love without respect is dependency, and loyalty without reciprocity is self-sacrifice. He begins to love from a place of abundance, not desperation. His loyalty becomes an expression of strength, not submission. He learns that genuine relationships require equality, transparency, and shared effort. He no longer invests in people who drain him. He invests in those who match his energy. The psychological shift is profound. He no longer chases connection, he attracts it through self-respect. As he moves forward, his discernment gives him peace. He no longer feels the need to fix broken people or convince others of his intentions. He accepts that not everyone will value what he offers, and that's okay. He knows that loyalty given to the wrong person becomes a lesson, not a loss. This mindset frees him from resentment. Instead of regretting his past trust, he honors it as the foundation of his emotional growth. Every betrayal, every disappointment has refined his perception. He now moves through life with quiet confidence, guided by experience rather than illusion. People may notice that he's different now, more reserved, more mysterious, less accessible. But this is not detachment, it's preservation. He has simply learned the art of emotional economy, giving only where value is returned. His trust is no longer a blanket extended to everyone. It is a mirror offered only to those who reflect sincerity. When he meets people who are genuine, his heart still opens fully. But he knows the difference between vulnerability and foolishness. He understands that love must flow both ways, or it becomes poison. So his trust, once pure and unguarded, becomes precise and powerful. He still has faith in humanity, but now it is paired with awareness. His loyalty has evolved into discernment, and through that evolution he becomes unbreakable. Because when a loyal man learns who to trust and who to let go of, no betrayal can ever destroy him again. He moves through life not with fear, but with clarity, knowing that his trust is no longer a weakness to be exploited, but a treasure to be earned. Pain changes a loyal man in ways that words can barely capture. When his loyalty is betrayed, the heartbreak pierces deeper than most could understand, because he gave his heart with purity, with belief, and with full emotional investment. But as time moves and silence becomes his companion, he begins to see that pain is not only a punishment, it is a teacher. It begins to reshape his perception of life, of people, and of himself. He realizes that pain is energy, and if he does not channel it, it will consume him. So instead of drowning in his sorrow, he starts to turn it into something meaningful. The same pain that once weakened him begins to feed his strength. It becomes his motivation, his discipline, his fire. That's when his transformation begins, when pain turns into purpose. Psychologically, the human mind cannot remain in pain forever. It seeks resolution, a sense of meaning. For a loyal man, that meaning is found when he decides that his suffering will not be wasted. Every sleepless night, every unanswered question, every moment of disappointment becomes fuel for a deeper purpose. He starts asking himself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? The brain begins to rewire itself when pain is processed through reflection. The loyal man learns to channel his emotional energy toward progress instead of pity. The wound that once bled becomes a reminder of his strength to survive. His pain transforms from a source of misery into a source of power. In this process, he begins to change his habits. Where once he spent his time waiting, hoping, and giving endlessly, he now invests that same energy into building himself. He might dive into his work, his fitness, his creativity, or his dreams. He begins to pour into his goals what he once poured into people. This redirection is deeply therapeutic. It teaches him that the love he gave others can also be given to himself. The mind heals faster when it is occupied with purpose. The loyal man, once broken by betrayal, now starts to rebuild his identity through his ambitions. His pain no longer owns him, it propels him. He also learns that pain brings clarity. When he was comfortable, he couldn't see who truly cared and who only stayed for convenience. Pain stripped away illusions. It exposed false friendships, empty words, and shallow affection. And though that truth hurt, it also set him free. He begins to realize that everything that left him was never meant for him. This clarity becomes part of his purpose, to never again waste energy on what doesn't align with his soul. He starts to focus on what adds to his peace, not what disturbs it. Every painful memory becomes a lesson, every disappointment a redirection. As his pain turns into purpose, his perspective on life deepens. He stops expecting fairness from the world and starts demanding excellence from himself. He no longer blames others for how they treated him. Instead, he takes responsibility for how he responds. That shift from blame to responsibility is psychological maturity. It is where growth begins. He stops saying, "Why did this happen to me?" and starts saying, "What is this trying to teach me?" That mindset transforms his pain into wisdom. He becomes someone who uses his scars as symbols of survival, not shame. His brokenness becomes the foundation upon which he builds a stronger version of himself. There comes a point when he starts to appreciate his pain, not because he enjoys it, but because he sees what it created within him. It made him tougher, more patient, more self-aware. It stripped away his naivety and replaced it with insight. The loyal man realizes that the pain which once seemed like the end was actually the beginning of a new chapter, the chapter where he learns who he truly is. When he was comfortable, he didn't know his limits. Pain showed him his endurance. It taught him discipline. It forced him to evolve. He begins to view life differently, not as a series of losses, but as a process of refinement. Emotionally, he becomes less reactive and more reflective. Pain used to make him angry or withdrawn. Now it makes him focused. He understands that every painful experience has a message hidden inside it. When he learns to decode that message, he gains power over his emotions. He no longer sees pain as an enemy, he sees it as a guide. This shift changes the entire way he lives. He starts helping others, sharing his lessons, inspiring people who feel broken just like he once did. His suffering gives him empathy. His healing gives him strength, and together they give him purpose. He becomes the man who turns pain into wisdom, suffering into service, and heartbreak into healing, for himself and for others. As he grows, he begins to realize that purpose is the antidote to pain. When a man finds something greater than his suffering to live for, the weight of his wounds becomes lighter. He channels his emotions into productivity, his loneliness into creativity, and his grief into gratitude. He starts waking up each day with a reason, even if it's small. That purpose becomes his anchor. It reminds him that his story isn't over because of betrayal. It's only just begun. Every scar becomes a reminder that he endured what was meant to break him. Every success becomes proof that his pain was not in vain. Over time, the loyal man no longer resents his past. He sees it as the necessary darkness that led him to his light. The betrayal that once felt like death now feels like rebirth. He understands that without pain, he would never have discovered his potential. Without loss, he would never have valued his peace. Without heartbreak, he would never have learned to love himself. His pain has become the foundation of his purpose. It has given him direction, discipline, and depth. He has turned the fire that once burned him into the flame that now drives him. And from that moment forward, he no longer fears pain because he knows it cannot destroy him anymore. It can only shape him into who he was always meant to be. Forgiveness is one of the hardest lessons a loyal man learns after he has been deeply hurt, when he has given his heart completely, when he has been true, patient, and consistent. Betrayal doesn't just cut, it shatters something inside him. In the beginning, forgiveness feels impossible. His mind replays the moments, the words, the lies, the silence that followed. Every part of him wants to understand why. But as time passes, he realizes that holding on to anger is like carrying a burning coal. It hurts only the one who holds it. His loyalty made him carry emotional weight longer than he should have. But eventually he sees that forgiveness is not about others. It is about freeing himself. It is the act of choosing peace over pain, clarity over confusion, and freedom over bitterness. Psychologically, the mind is designed to protect itself from emotional overload. When someone betrays a loyal man, his brain stores the pain in memories that repeat themselves, almost like a warning system. This repetition keeps him trapped, reliving the hurt again and again. Forgiveness interrupts that cycle. It doesn't erase the memory, but it changes his relationship with it. Instead of reacting with anger, he learns to respond with acceptance. The loyal man starts to understand that forgiving doesn't mean excusing the betrayal, it means refusing to let it define his life. When he chooses to forgive, he is not letting the other person win. He is reclaiming control over his own peace of mind. In his journey toward forgiveness, there is resistance. His heart fights with his mind. One part of him still feels the sting of betrayal, while another part longs for peace. This internal conflict is a natural human process. The loyal man wrestles with the thought that forgiving might make him look weak, but slowly he realizes the opposite is true. Forgiveness requires enormous strength, the strength to confront his pain, to face his emotions, and to rise above them. Anyone can hold a grudge, only the strong can release one. He understands that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, it requires emotional courage. It is a silent act of power, done not for them, but for himself. At first, forgiveness doesn't come in a single moment, it comes in stages. The loyal man begins by accepting that the past cannot be changed. No amount of replaying the story or imagining different endings will undo what happened. Acceptance brings stillness. Then comes understanding. He starts to see that people act according to their own level of awareness, maturity, and wounds. The person who betrayed him was acting from their own brokenness, not necessarily with the intention to destroy him. This realization doesn't justify the pain, but it explains it. And understanding softens resentment. He learns that everyone, including himself, is capable of failure. That awareness opens the door to compassion. And compassion is where forgiveness begins to grow. Forgiveness also changes how he views himself. Before, he carried guilt, questioning whether he was too loyal, too trusting, too blind. But as he reflects, he learns to forgive himself for giving too much. He realizes that loyalty was not his flaw, it was his strength. The mistake was giving it to someone who didn't value it. Forgiving himself becomes the turning point. It allows him to let go of self-blame and reclaim his dignity. He no longer defines himself by what happened to him, but by how he chose to rise from it. This internal forgiveness is the deepest form of healing because once he forgives himself, no one else can use his past against him. As he continues to heal, he notices something profound. His emotional energy begins to return. The bitterness that once weighed him down starts to lift. He begins to sleep better, think clearer, and breathe easier. This is not magic, it's psychological liberation. When anger leaves, space is created for peace to enter. His mind is no longer occupied by revenge or regret. Instead, it becomes focused on growth. He starts to see possibilities again, new directions, new relationships, new opportunities. Forgiveness becomes the bridge between his past and his future. It allows him to move forward without dragging old pain into new beginnings. People often mistake forgiveness for reconciliation, But the loyal man learns they are not the same. He can forgive and still choose to never return. Forgiveness doesn't mean opening the same door that hurt him. It means closing it gently and walking away without hate. It means wishing someone well, even from a distance. This emotional maturity protects his peace. He no longer needs to prove his goodness or make the other person understand his pain. He simply lets life handle what he no longer needs to carry. Forgiveness, for him, becomes a declaration of self-respect. I am done letting what hurt me control me. Over time, forgiveness becomes a habit, a way of living. He learns to release quickly, to detach with grace, and to protect his inner calm. He understands that people will disappoint, misunderstand, and hurt, but his peace is not up for negotiation. He learns that forgiveness is not a one-time act, but a daily decision. To stay free, to stay light, to stay aligned with his higher self. The loyal man who forgives learns that bitterness poisons the soul, but forgiveness purifies it. He becomes a different kind of strong, not the loud, vengeful strong, but the quiet, unshakable strong. Through forgiveness, he also rediscovers compassion. He becomes more understanding of human fragility, yet firm in his boundaries. He knows that people make mistakes, but he also knows he is not obligated to let them make the same mistake twice. He forgives, but he remembers. He releases, but he learns. He moves forward, but with wisdom. Forgiveness teaches him balance, the ability to have a soft heart with strong boundaries. Eventually, forgiveness gives him freedom unlike anything else. He no longer carries emotional baggage wherever he goes. His heart becomes lighter, his mind clearer, his soul calmer. He stops seeing himself as a victim of betrayal and begins to see himself as a survivor of it. Forgiveness transforms him from someone who was hurt to someone who is healed, and that healing becomes his quiet victory. Because the loyal man who learns to forgive has conquered something even greater than betrayal. He has conquered himself. When a loyal man has been betrayed, his way of loving changes forever. The same heart that once gave unconditionally begins to beat with more awareness. He no longer loves with blind faith. He loves with vision. His love becomes selective, not because he has lost the ability to care, but because he has learned the cost of giving it to the wrong person. Loyalty has taught him that love without boundaries leads to exhaustion, and trust without discernment leads to pain. So he begins to protect his heart, not by closing it, but by refining who gets access to it. His love becomes intentional, deliberate, and grounded in self-respect. Psychologically, when a man has experienced deep emotional betrayal, his mind reprograms the way it perceives intimacy. The part of him that once sought connection now seeks safety first. He becomes more aware of emotional red flags and learns to pay attention to energy instead of promises. He starts to understand that not everyone deserves the same depth of his care. This awareness is not coldness, it is wisdom born from survival. His love is still strong, but it is guided by clarity. He realizes that love should never require the sacrifice of his peace or self-worth. What once was given freely is now earned through consistency and sincerity. He learns that love is not proven by how much pain he can endure. In the past, he may have tolerated disrespect because his heart was loyal. He stayed when he should have walked away, believing that love could fix what character could not. But betrayal teaches him the difference between patience and self-neglect. Now, when he loves, he makes sure it is mutual. He values reciprocity over fantasy, truth over illusion, and stability over excitement. He no longer chases intensity, he seeks peace. The loyal man understands that love should feel safe, not uncertain. It should heal, not hurt. That understanding transforms the way he gives his affection. His love becomes selective because he has learned to read people's intentions. He observes how they treat others, how they handle honesty, and how they behave when life is not convenient. He no longer falls for charm, he watches for character. This shift makes him more grounded. When someone tries to enter his life, he doesn't rush the process. He allows time to reveal truth. He believes now that love should grow naturally, not be forced. His heart still feels deeply, but his mind now walks beside it. He has learned to balance emotion with logic, which makes his love stronger and healthier than ever before. As his love evolves, he begins to prioritize quality over quantity. He doesn't need many relationships or constant validation. He only desires something real, something where both people are loyal, honest, and emotionally present. He stops wasting energy on those who give mixed signals or temporary affection. Instead, he focuses on genuine connections that bring him peace. Psychologically, this is called emotional boundary formation. It's the stage where a man's emotional intelligence matures. He no longer confuses attention with love or attachment with care. His loyalty now serves his happiness, not his pain. He also becomes more careful with his expressions of love. In the past, he may have given too much too soon, his time, his effort, his soul. Now, he understands that true love grows through shared effort, not one-sided sacrifice. He still gives deeply, but only when he feels secure that the other person values his effort. This doesn't make him guarded, it makes him intentional. He loves from strength, not from need. He knows that real love isn't about possession or dependency. It's about two people walking side by side, respecting each other's individuality. His love becomes purer because it comes from wholeness, not emptiness. The loyal man who has been hurt learns that peace is his new measure of love. If a connection disturbs his peace, no matter how passionate it feels, he knows it's not right for him. He doesn't chase chemistry anymore, he chases alignment. He realizes that the right person will bring calmness, not chaos. This is one of the deepest psychological shifts a man can experience after heartbreak. The realization that love is not about constant highs, but steady balance. He values those who make him feel understood, not those who make him feel uncertain. The drama that once felt exciting now feels draining. What he desires most is emotional stability. Through this process, he becomes a better version of himself. His selectivity teaches him patience. He learns to wait for something meaningful rather than settle for temporary comfort. He also learns that being alone is far better than being misunderstood. His solitude no longer feels like loneliness. It feels like peace. During that solitude, he grows, reflects, and strengthens his purpose. And when he does love again, he gives the best version of himself, not the broken one. His love becomes deeper, but it also becomes disciplined. He knows his worth now, and he refuses to negotiate it. His selective love also affects how he views relationships in general. He no longer believes that love should complete him. He knows now that he must be whole before sharing himself with another. He understands that partnership is about mutual elevation, not emotional dependency. He is no longer impressed by surface attraction or sweet words. He looks for depth, for loyalty, for peace. He chooses people who bring light, not confusion. He no longer loves to prove something. He loves because it aligns with his spirit. Over time, his selective love becomes his greatest strength. It protects him from the chaos of meaningless attachments and keeps him focused on what truly matters. People may misinterpret his calmness as indifference, but it's not. It's mastery. It's the calm of a man who has been through emotional storms and learned to anchor himself. When he gives love now, it is pure, peaceful, and powerful. He doesn't give to be needed. He gives to connect, to build, to grow. So when a loyal man loves again after being hurt, it is not with the same innocence as before, but with wisdom, balance, and truth. His love becomes selective because he finally understands its value. He no longer wastes it where it isn't respected. He no longer offers it where it isn't reciprocated. He saves it for someone who recognizes that his loyalty is not weakness, but one of the rarest forms of strength. And when that kind of love is returned, it becomes something unbreakable. Love rooted in self-respect, built on trust, and sustained by peace. When a loyal man has been hurt, something profound awakens within him, a realization that self-respect must come before loyalty. His love was his driving force. He gave endlessly, forgave quickly, and stood firm even when others wavered. Betrayal has a way of rearranging a man's heart. It teaches him that devotion without self-respect is self-destruction. He begins to understand that loyalty should never come at the expense of his dignity. This awareness doesn't make him colder, it makes him wiser. The man who once placed others on a pedestal learns to place himself where he belongs, at the center of his own peace. Psychologically, this transformation stems from emotional individuation, the process where a person reclaims their sense of self after losing it in the service of others. For a loyal man, love once meant sacrifice. He believed that holding on was strength, that endurance was proof of care. But pain shows him another truth. Strength is not in staying, it's in knowing when to walk away. His self-respect becomes his moral compass. It guides him to protect his energy, to preserve his time, and to prioritize his mental health. The man who once sought approval now seeks alignment. The one who once begged for understanding now finds contentment in solitude. He no longer tolerates disrespect disguised as love. In the past, he might have accepted excuses, hoping the person he cared for would change. But now he realizes that change must begin within himself. His self-respect tells him that he doesn't need to fight for a place in someone's life if he has to lose himself to stay there. He learns the difference between patience and being taken for granted. Loyalty taught him how to care, pain taught him where to stop, and when he learns this boundary, he stops explaining his worth. He simply embodies it. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It comes from nights spent questioning his own value, wondering why his loyalty wasn't enough. It comes from moments when he had to pick himself up from emotional wreckage, realizing no one was coming to save him. Those experiences rebuild him differently. They teach him that his peace is non-negotiable, that not everyone deserves his time or his heart. He starts to see relationships through a new lens, one that filters through respect first. If respect isn't mutual, love can't survive. He no longer mistakes attachment for connection or pity for compassion. His self-respect becomes his standard, and anything less no longer fits into his life. He starts practicing emotional discipline. Instead of reacting to disrespect, he withdraws from it. Instead of trying to prove his loyalty, he proves his standards. His silence now speaks louder than confrontation ever did. Psychologically, this is the point of emotional regulation, a mature state where he controls his emotions instead of being controlled by them. He understands that peace is power. He doesn't need to shout his worth, he demonstrates it through the way he lives. The world begins to see the difference. He is not arrogant, he is self-aware. He doesn't need validation because he knows who he is. His priorities shift from being understood by others to understanding himself. He stops chasing apologies and starts creating boundaries. He no longer waits for people to see his value. He lives in a way that makes it undeniable. This transformation is liberating. It gives him clarity and balance. His energy, once scattered across people who didn't appreciate it, now becomes focused on growth, goals, and peace. He learns to enjoy his own company, realizing that solitude isn't loneliness, it's the sanctuary where self-respect is rebuilt. The man who once gave love freely now gives it with purpose. He understands that being loyal to others means nothing if he's not loyal to himself. He honors his values, protects his emotions, and walks away from anything that threatens his inner balance. When someone disrespects him, he no longer fights to explain why it hurts, he simply removes himself. That action speaks volumes. It says, I value my peace more than your inconsistency. This mindset doesn't come from pride, it comes from wisdom. A loyal man knows now that respect is the foundation of all genuine relationships. Without it, loyalty is wasted, and love becomes a burden. He begins to surround himself with people who match his energy, those who give as much as they take, who speak truthfully, who act with integrity. His circle becomes smaller, but it becomes stronger. He no longer craves attention, he values presence. The superficial connections that once entertained him now feel empty. What he seeks is depth, honesty, and alignment. He learns that self-respect naturally attracts the right kind of people, the ones who value stability over chaos and truth over comfort. In this new mindset, his confidence grows quietly. He doesn't need to boast or compete. He doesn't seek revenge against those who hurt him. He simply levels up, lets his peace do the talking, and his silence handle the rest. When he walks away, he doesn't do it in bitterness. He does it in clarity. His heart no longer carries resentment because he understands that holding on to pain only anchors him to the past. By choosing self-respect, he chooses freedom. Even in love, his approach transforms. He will still love deeply, but never at the cost of self-worth. He will still be loyal, but only where it is reciprocated. He now knows that true love enhances one's dignity, not diminishes it. He loves from completeness, not from emptiness. His relationships are no longer about filling voids, they're about sharing wholeness. That's the beauty of a man who's learned self-respect. His love becomes stronger because it comes from a healed heart. Every time he looks back at the version of himself who tolerated disrespect in the name of love, he feels gratitude, not shame. That man was necessary for him to evolve. Pain was the teacher that introduced him to his worth. Now, when life tests his loyalty again, he doesn't question whether others deserve it. He asks whether he can offer it without losing himself. If the answer is no, he walks away with grace. Because the loyal man who has learned self-respect no longer seeks to be understood by everyone. He only seeks to remain at peace with himself. And that peace, once earned, becomes unshakable.